I now have the pressure plate. This is the one that's in between the earlier 9-inch and the later 9.5-inch with just these fingers. And this one's got this additional unit here to allow for the older style throwout. But anyway, what I'll do now is I'll give this a clean. I'll give the flywheel a clean. I'm going to be using the old clutch, not in the best condition, but still okay to use. So I'll clean it all up and I'll start bolting it in. Using brake cleaner, nice and clean. So I've got an old shaft which I'll be using as the clutch alignment tool, and I've already replaced the spigot, this thing here, and here's remnants of the old one. Very easy to remove. I just basically hacksawed a little bit in here and used a soft chisel or soft screwdriver to actually bend the ends in, and of course eventually it just broke apart anyway. You'll notice that there are 3 dowel pins. Earlier model Land Rovers with a 9-inch clutch only had 2 dowel pins, so you can't interchange an old clutch pressure plate with a more recent flywheel because of the well, I suppose you could take the dowel pins out, and it does allow, I believe, for 2. But in this case I've decided to just stick with a 9.5-inch, given that it's a diesel engine. Right, so I'm just holding it in position, and what I'll start to do now is start putting in the bolts that surround the pressure plate. All I'm doing here is just making sure that they look pretty good, that everything seems to be aligned up, and all I'll do is I'll just put these in and just hold it in place if I can with my butterfingers. Okay, so the bolts are all in. You can see them here. Now it's very important that you don't try to put a bolt hole where the actual pin goes, the dowel pin. So make sure you got it in the right position, and you'll quickly find out if you don't. So already just by tightening them in a bit, that's a nice smooth operation there. And so now what I'll do is I'll go around slowly tightening these up, and I'll do it in a kind of a same sequence as you would with, say, wheel studs. You know, you go the opposite ends and you tighten them up progressively until you get to the torque. Now before I do that, I'm just going to make sure that I can slide this in and out quite easily, and it should be able to. So see, there's already just by doing it finger tight, these things, and I've just basically used it with that, and just basically, I can still even tighten it a bit more just by hand. That is already sufficient pressure to allow me to remove this and for the clutch unit to kind of stay in situ. So I'll see if I can get a bit of light in there. Okay, so I should be able to just pretty much throw that in like that. And of course, this is the issue if you don't get it aligned, that when you come to put the gearbox in, which has got this input shaft as that, and you come to slide the gearbox in, I mean, you already got to deal with having to align the splines up. Last thing you want to do is not being able to put it through because it's interfering with the spigot bush. And that is a nice, solid, good position, good alignment. But I'm going to keep that in there for the minute whilst I tighten up these in sequence. As I said, just do them, I'm going to be doing them opposite, and then I'll finish it off with a torque wrench. Right, so the next step now is to grab the gearbox over there and crane it over, and all going well, it should just fit in without any dramas. Famous last words. Right, so this is the bit where we start needing to be a little bit more careful. So I'll need to drop, obviously we've got the mounts that go into the appropriate chassis location, but because this is sticking out past the bell housing, what we have to do is actually drop it so that the tip here obviously clears the pressure plate, and then once we've got it in a position where we can then slide it in, we'll have to then push the entire gearbox in. I'm also going to remove these nuts and bolts because I can tell already that they're going to be a nuisance. So a little bit of a trick there. Right, so getting close, but what I've got to do now is you can see how the gearbox is kind of leaning backwards. So I need to just fiddle around with the hoist and the strap and see if I can get it right. Now the other thing that's going to be in the way is I'll need to figure out how to get rid of the straps once I'm close to positioning it, or maybe I'm going to have to do it after, I'm not sure. Had the same problem when I put the engine in, where I had to move the straps against and over the engine mounts there. So don't want to do that again, but anyway, it is what it is, so I'll have to just figure it out. Slowly making progress. What I had to do was I had to use a jack underneath the sump to push the motor further up, and that's allowed me clearance to bring the gearbox in and have a little bit of clearance with the gearbox mounts anyway. So what I've also done is I've put it into gear and I moved the handbrake so that way the splines can mesh inside, the input shaft can mesh inside with the clutch, and yeah, it's just a little bit more heave-hoing, I think, to get that in there. So yeah, bit of a struggle at the moment, but and there's a, sorry if you can't see much, so I can't go any lower because the gearbox mounts are there, so let's see if I can press that just a tiny bit more. There we go. Okay, let's just put this in place. The jack is now down, no longer against the engine. That's fairly loose. Well, I suppose I can still give it a bit more. Okay. So you can see how it's now sitting quite nicely. I've got the bolts on that side, but you can see over here they're misaligned a little bit. You see? So I'm just going to have to do a little bit of heave-hoeing on that, and I suspect the motor is probably slightly out of alignment. So what I'm going to have to do is bolt up the flywheel, get all these in, and then use that as leverage to try to just tweak it a little bit to one side. Fast forwarding a bit, I had to just get this done. All the nuts are on. I've managed to position both the mounts, which is great. I've put the slave on there. All I'm now waiting for is the components that go in there, which is the clevis, I think it's called. I've got the pin, but I don't have the actual bracket. I do have it here. You can see it's busted. I've got these two new ones, which I've showed beforehand about the wear on the original one there. And there's the spherical bush, which I've replaced also. So pretty much that's it. Now I'll be able to install the two prop shafts, the handbrake, and continue on with the build. So what I'll do is I'll leave the video at this now. Gearbox installation, all done and dusted. Another major milestone. Really happy with it. So still making progress. Alright. As always, thanks for watching.